right. Well, welcome back, everybody, to Buildcast in our special series, 12-episode series on the road home, understanding the paths to and from homelessness. With me, as always, is our good friend Natalie with Social Strategies and Melissa with Homemade Austin.
Right.
So we're talking about, we're on episode 6 today, episode 5 today, as we talk about the different reasons for homelessness and hopefully really good conversation about, the problems and solutions. So I know you're super excited about today's guest. So who are we talking to today?
So excited.
I am inside out with joy.
Inside and out with joy.
I found a synonym for excited.
I like it.
That is victory number 1. Today we are talking about the lack of affordable housing. And we have 2 of my favorite people here with us today. First, we have Vaike O'Grady, who is a proud board member of the Homemade Austin board. But during the day, she is the regional director at Zonda of Austin. And next to her, we have Phyllis Snodgrass, who I adore and meet with on a monthly basis to talk about all things housing. And she is the CEO of Austin Habitat for Humanity. So welcome to both of you. We are so excited
Absolutely.
You are here today.
Yes.
And we would love for you to give us an introduction to you and how you ended up in the roles you're in and what they mean to you. So go ahead, Vaike, if you'll kick us off.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for having me today. I'm very excited to be here. I am the regional director at Zonda, formerly known as Metro Study. Metro Study's been around in Texas for over 30 years, tracking housing activity and doing market research in housing. So that's how I came to be here. I've spent about 30 years myself in the housing world, working for builders and developers. And because of that history of my career, it made sense for me to get involved with Homemade, and I am a proud board member of Homemade and support them in any way I can. So thank you, and I'm so happy to be here today.
Well, I'm excited to be here with Vaike and all of you. I am CEO of Austin Habitat for Humanity. After spending my first career, about 15 years as a CPA in real estate accounting, I moved to the nonprofit world and did almost that long running chambers of commerce across the state of Texas. And after my last chamber stint, which was at the Austin Chamber of Commerce, I got a call about a great opportunity. And someone said, this is, I think, your next career. And it was Austin Habitat for Humanity. And I just couldn't be more thrilled to come to Habitat at a time when we're dealing with probably one of the most important crises Austin's ever faced, and that's the affordable housing crisis. So happy to be here today.
Thank you, Phyllis. And Vaike, can you tell us what the heck is going on with the housing market?
Well, I'll tell you, it's a head scratcher for sure. We've never been in this situation before in terms of housing in Austin. We track pricing, and the first slide here will show you what's happened to pricing. We're used to prices increasing, and they've done that for every April per the past 5 years. But to increase over $120,000 in 1 year, that's just unheard of. This slide shows what's in MLS from the Austin Board of Realtors. So it's a mix of resale and new. It's a mix of attached and detached. But to go above $460 as a median closing price in April 2021, we just never thought we would be there. And unfortunately, the new home situation is also facing some challenges. And we'll show you that on the next slide. When you look at new home-based pricing, which we track at Zonda, we track base pricing from our builders, and I've compared those past 5 years, and you can see at the end of 2019 we were at 401 as a median base price. By the end of 2020 we were at 430, and then look at the curve of what happened to us the first 4 months of this year. So base pricing has gone up now to 454. Now, there are a few reasons for this. I'm sure we're going to dig into this in a little while, but one of the things that I want to caution you about is that we're not getting base prices like we used to because builders aren't base pricing their houses. Frankly, a lot of them are moving to a bid process. Mm-hmm. And so that's just emblematic of how high the demand is here in Austin and what's happening to the market. So let's take a look at the next slide. Now, we do a survey with developers, and I think this is part of what feeds into housing cost. Is we ask them what they're concerned about, how concerned are they? And you can see extreme concern for both land prices and availability and entitlement and approvals. So that those ranked it very highly there. Not to say that they didn't have concerns about labor shortages and cost, home affordability and mortgage rates, and development and construction costs, because those are also ranked fairly highly for concerns from developers. But I know we're going to talk a little bit more about how that really impacts what the situation is here in Austin. And then moving to the next slide, I wanted to share with you what the Mortgage Bankers Association in March is projecting in terms of mortgage rate appreciation. Now, they have us at second quarter at 3.2. I think that's about right. I'm sure Brian will be able to tell us. But we
I'm not allowed to talk about
We're not
rates.
allowed to talk about mortgage rates, Vaike.
Fair enough. Okay, so this is what a public entity said about
There you
mortgage rates. They want to go to 4.5. Well, they think we're going to be at 4.5 by the end of 2022. So mortgage rates are expected to go up as the economy improves, and that's going to affect affordability for buyers as well.
It's a double whammy, you know, absolutely skyrocketing housing prices and higher rates. I mean, that's going to put even more of a squeeze on for sure.
It's more pressure, right?
Yeah.
And then when we look at, nationally, the National Association of Home Builders did a study that talked about what people can afford. And I looked at this slide and did a little bit of math. And if you see here that we can't provide homes below $250,000, we lose 45% of all eligible households.
Wow.
So that's just mind-boggling. These are people who should be able to buy a home, and 3-4 years ago they could, but we just don't have that product here in Austin right now.
So talk a little bit about what's really driving all of this, if you would.
Well, there are a number of factors. There's the big factor of demand being generated by millennials who are now in their prime home buying years. The oldest millennials are 40 years old, so they're not young kids anymore. And many of them have families now. They want to move to school districts that work for them, et cetera. And they were thinking about buying a home, and then the pandemic came along, and that really pushed them to move forward with buying a home, not to mention the low interest rates that finally made it doable.
Sure.
So we have this huge demographic shift in our country, which is it's not only affecting Austin, it's affecting all of the markets in the country, with millennials wanting to purchase homes. And the pandemic certainly affected those folks who said, I don't want to live in an apartment anymore. I don't want to be too close to too many people, and my amenities are all closed down. If I have my own yard, my own space, that's a good thing. So that demand grew very, very strong. It was already starting to grow. And then the pandemic just pushed it into overdrive. Now, coupled with that, we had tariffs in place with lumber. We had tariffs in place with steel. And we had the lumber mills actually shut down in anticipation of the pandemic causing a decrease in demand. And that didn't happen. May or June of last year, demand just ramped up, and the mills weren't ready for it. And since that time, they really haven't been able to hire up in order to get the lumber out there. So lumber cost is a key driver. But
I'm hearing that, even when, which I think everybody's expecting, hopefully sooner rather than later, lumber prices go down, it's going to be a while before that really hits the streets for exactly what you're talking about, Mike. I mean, the mills just don't have the capacity, don't have the staff. Right.
And we were already in a tight housing situation. I mean, the Austin Board of Realtors was tracking, 2 months or less supply on the ground. And again, that all the housing stock that was on the ground got absorbed during that time frame. And now we're looking at like a 2-week supply of houses available to purchase.
And it's not just lumber. I mean, it's PVC pipe. It's, all kinds of things. And the winter storm impacted that too, right?
Absolutely.
The ability to deliver on these materials. I mean, we're seeing with our national partnerships that we're not able to get paint right now just because of the winter storm and the availability of certain materials.
Concrete, lots of things, chips. Yeah.
And I'd like to also ask, Vaike, you've covered millennials, materials, and the lack of inventory. What about the percentage of people who are moving into the greater Austin area from large corporations relocating to the area? How big of an impact is that, or an additional pressure are you seeing that place on an already pressured housing market?
Oh, for sure, Natalie. Great question. Yeah, we've had, July of last year is when Tesla announced they were going to build their gigafactory in Austin. And that, again, was just a shot in the arm to an already expanding relocation market. The chamber tracks relocations and expansions, and those have been going fairly strong in Austin already. And not to mention, in the year before, Apple said they're going to build a huge campus in Austin, hire 5,000 people. So you've got this tremendous interest from these very popular companies that people in tech fields are following, and Austin already had that sort of going for them, and now that throws that into overdrive. So we have seen a lot of interest in relocations, especially from both coasts, especially from very high tax areas, and people who where housing was expensive anyway. So they come to Austin and they think they're getting a deal, right? But the poor local Austinites are kind of left sitting on the sidelines.
On that, I was shocked. I believe it was in the annual housing forecast with the HBA. Mark Sprague threw something out that that took me a step back, in that, I think the common thought and perception is this is everyone moving in from the California market. They're coming in from New York. These are huge tech companies. When Mark mentioned that in actuality, the relocations to the Austin area are predominantly coming from within Texas. Are you still seeing that too? And is that something that you can speak to for us in the audience?
Yeah, we see a tremendous influx from Houston and Dallas for sure.
Okay.
When I moved here from Florida 11 years ago now, my boss who lived in Houston said, "You beat me to hill country," but that's kind of where everybody wants to live. So, we live in a beautiful place, and people want to be here. And that's true for people who are just graduating from college and getting good tech jobs in Austin, as well as for people who want to retire here and just enjoy the lifestyle. So we see a tremendous influx, but that's also within Texas. There's no question. That's the biggest market for sure.
And with material costs on the rise and inevitably home prices on the rise, Phyllis, how does this impact affordable housing?
Well, I mean, Vaike's slides pretty much said it all. If 45% of the people need housing below $250,000, I mean, that's what we provide. And while a builder can hold off setting their price until they can accompany or cover the cost of the rising cost of materials and deal with the market. I mean, our price is set. An affordable home is sold to a person at a certain income level and it's set based on the percentage of their income spent on housing. If you're making less than $100,000 a year and you're spending more than, say, 35% of your income on housing, that starts to affect what else you spend money on. Healthcare, education, transportation, all those necessities start to get cut back when you have to spend a larger and larger percentage of your income on housing. So some of the folks that are moving in that have higher incomes, they can afford to spend more on housing. But the folks that are working and keeping our economy alive, they're the ones that are really struggling right now and getting priced out of their homes.
Well, because incomes haven't gone up along with, ultimately rates and especially housing costs, and eventually something's got to give, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
What is
deal of it also starts with the land prices. So that at the heart of it, if you've got such demand for land, that raises the land price. And, we've had a lot of conversation among developers and builders about what percentage of land cost is to the price of the house.
Right.
And we're hearing of people coming in from the market, buying land sight unseen as an investment and taking that property effectively out of the market, out of the play.
Exactly.
So we just don't have the affordable land to be able to build affordable homes.
It is really hard. We haven't bought large chunks of land in several years. I mean, we're getting a few opportunities, but they're usually resulting from someone who's forced to provide a certain percentage of affordable housing, or a great partner like Catellus, who's creating a neighborhood that has a percentage of affordable housing in it. But it is very difficult to do anything in and close to Austin, which is where we need the housing the most, affordably, because the lots are just that expensive. And if you're going to sell a house for $200,000, it's really hard to afford a lot for $100,000.
And it's getting harder because you have to go farther and farther to find affordable land, and the submarkets are now, close in, and they're getting expensive, So, and I think the one saving grace with COVID is that I think our workforce has migrated at least a substantial portion of to be able to work from home. So that certainly helps. But like you mentioned, Phyllis, if we've got investors coming in, taking that land off the market, then you have to start driving 2-3 hours to
Right.
get
Yeah,
to a place where it's affordable.
About the drive to qualify
Mhm.
concept,
Mhm.
like talk to us about the sustainability of that.
Yeah.
Well, think about who can, we talk about, well, more and more people can work from home. Can our janitors work from home?
No.
Can our store workers work from home? The people that keep our businesses alive, the people that work in our hotels and that do work in our service industry, our firefighters, our policemen, the teachers, a lot of the people that we serve need to be in the workplace. They can't necessarily work from home. And those are the people that are the most impacted. And their houses, old habitat neighborhoods, way back before we put deed restrictions on them, whole other topic about how we can preserve long-term affordability. But that used to not be a thing in Austin. Austin used to be affordable. But in older neighborhoods, those houses are worth over $400,000. Those people are having to pay taxes on a house that's worth over $400,000 when they bought it for $100,000. That's just not sustainable. It makes it difficult for them. It is getting hard for anybody who doesn't make over $150,000 a year to find a house in Austin.
Yeah, not nearly impossible. What are you seeing? And I might be jumping ahead here. What are you seeing as parts of the pathways to getting to spaces within the Austin community that provide affordable housing? What's needed? What is Habitat for Humanity? What are you pushing on currently, whether it's, from a municipality perspective or a consumer public perception? What are the next steps to increasing affordable housing in the area, if any?
Well, we need more housing at all levels, at all prices throughout Austin.
Mm-hmm.
We need a denser Austin. We need to forget to a certain point the Austin that used to be here. We love Austin, but at some point we have to accept the fact that we are a growing community, and it doesn't make sense to put high-rise condos in the suburbs. It makes sense to put them in Austin, and the closer to the core we can get them, the better. The denser we can make Austin, the less people are on the roads, the less expensive it is, the less land we take up. We have fought for zoning changes, code reform, everything that a for-profit developer wants, we need to have happen as well, because if we don't have more housing, it just pressures out the people at the bottom.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really difficult to develop new projects in certain municipalities. There's not the political will to go more dense.
Mm-hmm.
And, I was thinking about that this morning. Is ultimately what needs to happen is we have to change a mindset
Absolutely.
and realize that housing is something that is a right.
Absolutely.
We should be
Yes.
housing
Mhm.
people. It can't just be, I don't want it in my backyard. And
Right.
for too long,
Yeah.
we've been in that situation here in Austin where the voters basically say, we don't care. We don't care. We're going to keep what we've got. And you go find it somewhere else. And we need to change that thinking.
It's that community thinking, isn't it? It's just, and those are solutions that I feel like are within reach. It's, the city helping us combat NIMBYism, helping us get through the permitting process. The challenges that Phyllis and I face are the same ones that for-profit developers
Sure.
and builders face.
Absolutely.
Because we're all working together. There isn't a nonprofit that builds that isn't working with for-profit builders and developers. And so to make these things like getting us through permitting more quickly, getting the plans approved more quickly, making it easier to build, and incentivizing builders, whether they be nonprofit or for-profit, to do so.
And what product you build. Natalie, you and I have seen
yeah.
this constantly, and it's not just Austin. It's really on a national level. Speaking of NIMBYism, manufactured and modular are a tremendous way to help this particular crisis. And you said it earlier, Phyllis. This is the biggest issue facing housing right now is affordability. And so many municipalities say, no, I'm not going to take this product.
Yep.
It doesn't fit our little box, what we've already drawn, and what we've
Exactly.
already decided goes here. You can't bring innovative solutions to the table as long as you expect everything to have a certain size yard and a certain size
Correct.
lot and a certain size house. Yeah.
Well, and like you said, I mean, we have to accept that things are changing,
Right.
you know, and what our neighborhoods look like are changing, what our houses look like are changing. They have to. Otherwise, you know, that 45%, it's just going to continue to grow instead of shrinking.
Well, and the irony in that comment, and when you look outside of traditional housing and resetting the perception from both a municipality and a public perception, today my business partner is in Johnson City with the city council and the mayor, and we are fighting tooth and nail to move IRC code, which is your traditional building, over to MH code. Manufactured housing. And so Brian and I have been working for the past, year or so with a North American manufactured housing provider. And it is exactly what you all are saying. You go in, the door closes, and you have to knock again, and knock again to make, to start to change the perception of a trailer. Yeah. Versus a manufactured home that meets, if not exceeds, traditional housing
and looks like
right,
it
and
so
looks
many
just
ways,
like
yes.
it. So there's a pushback, not only in Texas. I mean, we're like you all said, we're seeing this in every market. But the solutions are taking, at least in my experience, longer to come. But they're there. And they're being provided on different levels. It's just getting everyone else on board to see housing in a different light, much to your point, Phyllis.
Yeah.
And I think that I once heard an architect say, like, the true definition of inclusive housing is not being able to tell where anyone lives. Like, it's being able to look at a building and it's a beautiful building and you can't tell who lives inside it. And I think that's your point. I mean, you can make manufactured homes that exceed, you know, expectations, qualifications of what, you know, can you talk to us? I mean, especially with cultural shifts and, you know, gentrification of areas, what impact has redlining had on the housing crisis?
Well, and redlining had a lot to do with creating it in the first place. I mean, we created a situation where we pushed people away from the core into a designated area. And I say we, wasn't here, but we need to own this as a community collectively, that we as a community allowed that to happen and pushed people into a designated area, and then suddenly decided that designated area where we were not going to provide adequate services and bring all the amenities that occur, that, you know, are prevalent in other parts of town. We were now seeing that as valuable because we looked across I-35 and said, "Oh, this is now really close to downtown. How did we never notice this? Why did we do this?" And so, you know, suddenly you create a market in a place where people had been placed. We just created a community where we have made it commonplace for people not to live together in an integrated, well-balanced community. And the pushback we get, honestly, just astounds me when we're trying to bring Habitat homes into a neighborhood sometimes, because just the immediate thoughts of it's going to increase crime or it's going to decrease my property value. I mean, the two reasons people don't want us to come in their neighborhood is they either think we're going to bring the values up or we're going to bring the values down.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, wow. You know, we're going to gentrify it too much or we're going to decrease it, neither of which is true. You know, we're just trying to provide more affordable housing.
And I think we're finding that people of all incomes are being displaced right now. I mean, if you put your house on the market, you better hope you have somewhere to go, because you're already priced out of Austin. I mean, what were we saying on the call the other day? Somebody came in at like $400,000 over a bid the other day.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago. I had a personal friend who came in and they backed out at $250,000 over the asking price, and the home finally sold for $400,000 over the asking price.
And those stories used to be really shocking, but now they're becoming more and more common.
And they're saying people are
that.
Right. Exactly, Phyllis. You go, who's paying
and they are
this?
paying enough to buy 2 affordable homes. On top of
Great point. That's a fantastic point.
And you're saying people are taking out 401ks, and it's these are wild wild times we are living in.
They are, yeah. And Vaike, you were mentioning that as well, that you had heard recently. Maybe we speak a little bit to that. What you're hearing is people are cashing in their 401k.
It just concerns me from a long-term perspective. That doesn't always work out for the best to use all your retirement planning to purchase a home. I don't think we're going to see a huge correction in this market because the demand is solid and is likely to continue. But I do expect to see some sort of a correction as mortgage rates increase, because that's just going to take more people out of the market. And then we may see some prices come down and things start to return to a more normal situation. But until we get more supply in the market, we're still going to be facing an issue where demand is outpacing it. Yeah. And that's going to take a while.
I haven't seen a lot of instances, though, where prices, we've never in Austin Habitat's history seen prices go down.
Yeah.
And I really worry about that. It's getting harder and harder to serve families at lower income levels because the cost of the land and the construction and all the rules and regulations that the city puts on us that used to not exist, that just every single thing they decide we need to do costs money. And it doesn't matter if it's a garage or a sidewalk or an irrigation system or, whatever, it all costs money and it has to come somewhere.
Yeah. And it's not just the city of Austin, right?
No, it isn't.
It used to be the city of Austin was the one that everyone said, oh, it's too hard to build there, too expensive, but it's the whole region now. And, we just have to change mindsets and get people to recognize that this is a crisis. We've got to solve it. We've got to house people. What's the alternative?
Right.
More people camping?
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah. Which is not a long-term viable solution. I think what worries me is we have these large organizations that are coming to Austin, but I think the misconception is that, you're going to have, 10,000 employees coming from California and they've got plenty of equity because they sell their house and they have the cash. Well, that's not the case. I mean, as you were mentioning earlier, the companies may be coming here, but they have to employ people from here. In workforce housing, you're not talking about Tesla executives that can afford an $800,000, $900,000 house. You're talking about people that, may not be able to afford much more than $200, $250.
$16 to $21 per hour, I believe, is the average pay for the Tesla plant worker.
Where are they all going to go?
Yeah.
It's
and
great that
Vaike can correct me if I'm wrong, but where do they go?
It's great that we have all these companies here, and I think they'll keep the housing market strong, but it's only going to compound the issue.
Yes.
Well, and I looked, one of the things that Zonda tracks is future lot development. So when something gets platted, we start tracking it in our system, and then we cover it along the way and look at when stakes go in, when equipment goes on site and all that stuff. So I did a 10-mile radius around Tesla, and I looked at, because everybody's talking about, the boom that's coming in the southeast part of the world, which is historically been a more affordable place, right?
Yeah.
And I looked at 10-mile radius around Tesla. We're only tracking about 1,000 lots that are underway in development. So if you're going to be anywhere close to Tesla, there's no place to live there, unless Mr. Musk decides that he's going to use the extra land on his site to build some housing for his people, and we have a factory town. Otherwise, people are going to be driving from pretty far away to be able to work at Tesla.
And Mr. Musk, if you are listening, we would love to visit with you about this.
Yeah.
Be part of this solution.
Call me, Elon. Call me.
Yeah.
Phyllis has tons of ideas.
Yes, and he and I have the same birthday in June, so it's a lot of reasons for us to get
Cosmic
together.
connection.
You'll buy him a piece of cake.
I will.
Let's talk about that a little bit. Let's talk about some ideas and thoughts on, whether it's Tesla or municipalities.
Solutions.
What can we do? What are some solutions?
You might have seen that story that ran in the Business Journal last week by a company that's doing container housing. They actually have 3 sites, one in Bastrop, one in Lago Vista, I think one other one up by the lake, where I'm assuming that because they're talking about it, that they've gotten approval to put these container homes in play. And they can range anywhere from, I believe, $25,000 to, if you put multiples together, it can go to that $1 million home complex, if you will. That kind of innovative thinking, I think, is going to help us because, again, lumber prices aren't coming down. And we're still building houses the way we have done for 150 years. I think the quote in the article said, you don't expect to put your car together in your driveway, right? Why not get your house built and shipped to you? And I think there are people looking at that and seriously looking at that and making some headway in that regard. And I'm excited about that. I think we need some innovation in the industry.
But
isn't that happen?
We have to have land that allows for it.
Right.
We have to have zoning and permitting.
Zoning is everything.
All of the above. we build a pretty affordable house. I mean, our base price to construct is probably around 115 to 140. Like, beat that, maybe I think 175 for some of our higher end product. We're participating in an initiative with some folks at Texas State who are going to study affordable housing and try to come up with something. And they're using our home as the base.
Oh, that's
and
exciting.
So our
amazing.
construction
Nice.
director is really, kind of championing, really just pushing back on, it needs to be able to accomplish, being real world about it. And It's great to say you've come up with a cheaper house, but if nobody will let you build it,
Right.
you've got to have a solution that works in the communities where we need it to work. And so we're really excited to see what they're able to come up with. There's some prize money attached to it. So
Love it. Eat 'em up, Bobcats.
I know,
Great.
right?
Well, and even in the financial world, I mean, there needs to be work and acceptance as well, because
Mhm.
container homes,
Yes.
as great as they are,
Yep.
tiny homes, as great as they can be, can't finance them like a traditional mortgage. And, that's where we need to grow and adapt as an industry as well, because, we're talking about common sense solutions. How many people are going to be able to afford to pay $150,000, $200,000, regardless of how it's built? People need to be able to finance it. So, and that's something that, again, as an industry, we'll have to struggle with.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
It is great to see like companies like Icon just challenging the way we view housing.
Yes.
And I mean, gosh, the lumber you cut down on alone. I mean,
Right.
that's going to be, if lumber doesn't stabilize and go down, I mean, that's going to be, we're going to have to innovate our way out of this.
Yeah,
for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and it's definitely grown. I mean, Icon kind of started that craze, but now you see new startups all across the country
Popping up everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, and you see different cities coming up with new ways to address it. A few months back, LA released a piece and approved 14 architects for 14 designs provided for tiny homes that could be built within the LA area. And that was their way to address affordability and denser housing. So we're seeing a lot of that. Brian, you know this well. We're seeing a lot of the, whether it's traditional or manufactured, but with the ADU unit in the back of the home so that the grandparents can stay, the college student can come home, older children. And that's part of, I think, addressing it in new, innovative ways.
I do have a question about that, Ashley, because I was talking about that as well as a great solution. And someone said to me, yeah, but the only people that are going to build those ADUs are the people that can plunk down $150,000 to build one because they can't get financing for it. Is that accurate or is that not so true?
No, it's
No.
actually, financing on ADUs has actually become
Mhm.
substantially easier.
Good to
So,
hear.
yeah.
So is the pricing. We're actually, our teams are in the middle of the pricing exercise on that, Vaike. And that was the very first question we had to ask is, if we come in and we're in an affordable price point in the California market, and we plop that 150 ADU, we're no longer affordable. So you look anywhere and definitely don't hold me to this, but you look at starting around $69,990 and going up from there. To that point, when Village Farm was launched in Austin, that was one of the biggest selling points. And that's why we sold so many so quickly was the concept of living communal. You have the farms, you've got the engagement, but it was price point, and the price point was starting $69,990. So it still is, it's still an opportunity I think that many are missing out on.
Sure.
I don't know, Phyllis or Vaike or Melissa, I don't know if the city of Austin, I believe the last I heard, we're not approved for ADU. It's only outside of Austin.
Yeah, it is very difficult to find a place in Austin where you can put ADUs, and that needs to change.
Yeah.
It's very different.
It's not like there isn't any place, but by and large, most of the places in Austin you can't, and we need that. That is just, we need all of the above solutions.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been what are they calling it? Is it I'm going to totally butcher the name, but Lennar has like a floor plan. It's like the next gen.
Multi-gen.
Nailed it. Multi-gen.
Yeah.
But just, I mean, the concept that, they've been doing it in Louisiana and other parts of the country for years. I mean, you go to New Orleans and like everybody lives with their families. I mean, I lived in Venezuela and everybody lives with their families till they get married, but just that concept of like living together under one roof, whether it's, not even just the boomerang kids coming back, but it's also like your parents, moving back
right.
in and needing care
Sure.
or not being able to afford to live on their own. I'm in the midst of reading Nomadland, which is a great movie. Book is a little bit darker than the movie is. It's just a little bit more of a downer, but talks about how challenging it is to age in this country, and you know how hard it is to be employable and to be able to afford, you know, housing and your lifestyle. And it's very eye-opening.
Sadly,
And
these
most-
are not new concepts.
No.
This is stuff that was being built during my parents' generation and before. You know, it was common to have tight housing in the city and to have ADUs. I think my parents' first place was a garage apartment. You know, that needs to happen now. We moved into a very separated suburban society where everyone, you know, wants to be spaced apart and not see each other. And that has a lot of detriments to society. I think it contributes to homelessness. I mean, we're losing a sense of community, and now we fight when people want to live close to us.
Right.
Right.
I think the advent of the automobile and having garages made a big, you know, that was a huge influence.
Absolutely.
And, you know, but I'm optimistic. I mean, we know kids now aren't choosing to get their license. There's not the magic of their first car that there used to be.
Very true.
And, you know, if we have transportation hubs, it's very natural for those to be locations for tighter housing because you can get on a bus or you can get on a train and get to work.
That's right.
Yeah.
So are y'all seeing, I mean, we talked a lot about what Austin is or really is not doing to support this. Are you seeing any municipalities, any metro areas that are doing what you would consider a really good job?
Well, I think
I think the pause is very telling.
if you go further out, the reality is that the municipalities just aren't prepared to fight against growth.
Yeah.
And I mean, what you see is, and we've seen this here multiple times, is that as the suburban cities start to get more and more dense, people go another step outward, and then those cities are surprised and then have to figure out how to deal with the density, right? And I anticipate that happening in places like Taylor, like Lockhart. I mean, it certainly happened in Liberty Hill. People leapt over Cedar Park and Leander and went right to Liberty Hill, and it's grown like crazy.
Sure.
And now they're trying to figure out how do we service all these people, right? And so it's a challenge. But I will tell you, I am encouraged. I think there's more conversation happening about housing and the need that we've got because of the crisis we're facing. So the city, I've had conversations with people at the city, I've had conversations with people at the county, and they're at least voicing a will to dive deeper and understand the causes.
Maybe we have a strategic housing blueprint laid out since 2017 that tells you what we need to do.
130,000 units, right?
And they've fought every single thing that's in that. I mean, I'm going to say something that's going to be really unpopular. And
I'm looking forward to this.
Welcome to the club.
I'll have the delete button ready.
Look at Houston. You know, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
they don't have an affordable housing crisis like we do.
Right.
And I'm not a fan of, you know, absolutely no zoning and build anything anywhere. But truly, that's a proof that when you don't impose ridiculous restrictions, housing can be built affordably and you can house people.
It's a valid point. Yeah.
But I still don't want to be Houston.
I still don't want to be Houston. I love people in Houston. There's a lot of beauty in Houston, but you know, there's a happy compromise there, and they are one extreme. We are the far end of the spectrum on the other side.
So what's it going to take to get to that in Austin? Phyllis, do you think it's a change of city council? Is it, since we're going to go there, we're going to go.
Brian,
Okay,
I'm not going to be Mayor Adler. You're trashing anybody today, but bless his heart. He's like, but you know, I think that we really do have to look to the future. I think we are going to have to grow some new leadership with new ideas, and I welcome and embrace those new ideas. I think the younger generations see this much more clearly than some of the folks that really are still holding on to the power right now.
Yeah.
It takes courage, doesn't it?
It
takes courage to be unpopular and make those decisions.
It's a hard thing.
But the city's changing.
Spot on.
The city's changing, you know, and we need to change along with it, right? As the city changes its personality and its and new people come here, they have different expectations.
Well, and if we really care about racial equity, and if we really care about having an inclusive community where everyone belongs, the only way we're going to make that happen is to allow affordable housing to be built. And unfortunately, people hear that word and they think Section 8 housing. That is
Exactly.
what goes in their mind.
Yeah.
And that's not what affordable housing is today. And it hasn't been that way for a long time. The only way we move forward is embracing it.
I think it's a great stopping point for you, Phyllis, too. You said the words Section 8 housing come into mind when you hear affordable housing. So what would be your way to change that perception and replace it with what's truth?
Well, when I first came to Habitat 5 years ago, and we had done some incredible work over the 30 years we'd been in existence, and we just had our 35th anniversary last year. But one of the things I said is we've got to get into more neighborhoods, and we did different product that the community will embrace. And once we have a portfolio of that and are not just talking about what we're capable of doing, but actually putting that on the ground, people will see it differently. And one of the projects I'm most proud of that we just completed is 11 townhomes in the Mueller subdivision. Michael Shue designed them. They are beautiful, and they are affordable. They, the highest priced home there, I think, sold for about $200,000.
Wow.
That's the future of affordable housing, and it doesn't look different. It doesn't have a Habitat logo, on the mantle. It doesn't, you can't drive by and notice what it is. It's going to blend into neighborhoods, into communities. That's going to be what moves the needle, because people need to be comfortable with it being in their neighborhood.
Kind of like what we've been talking about with manufactured, creating these manufactured home communities that look and feel and act exactly like your stick built.
Right.
As these projects start to come to fruition, start to come to market, I think you're going to see kind of a snowball effect, because then you'll start to see municipalities go, well, wait a minute, that's not so bad. And we have 5 or 10 or 15,000 units short of what we need for housing. So, Vaike, we'll give you kind of the last word now. As we look to wrap up, what do you think the most important thing that our listeners needs to know? I know that's an open-ended question. But
that's a good
what's
one.
the one thought you would want to leave everybody with?
Can I give you two?
Yes, you can give us two.
Bonus.
Yeah, I think one thing I'd like to erase is the misconception that developers and builders are making money hand over fist during this time.
Yeah, it's a good point.
They're not out there to rob you.
Correct.
At least the vast majority are not. Yeah. They're out there to build you a good product and to make some profit from it for sure. But they are being hit on all sides from a cost perspective. So they're not trying to take advantage of the market necessarily. They're trying to manage their business too. I mean, frankly, they're having trouble getting homes started and homes completed.
Yep.
It's not a problem to sell a house, but building it and getting it completed is really difficult for them.
For a reasonable profit as well. And those profits have been shrinking and shrinking for them as well. So absolutely, that's a really good point.
And then the second comment is just, be open and optimistic about what we can accomplish if we kind of think about the world a little differently. We can house people across all walks of life and do it in a safe and attractive way. We just need to be a little bit more innovative and open.
Any final comments from the peanut gallery?
You can't follow up that. I mean, she dropped her mic.
That's why
Not literally.
they're here. Yeah. That's why they're here.
Thank you both so much.
Yep. Yeah.
Yes, this has been, this conversation could have gone on 3 times as long. So thank you for giving us the condensed version. And I feel very educated, and I learned a lot today. So that's our goal, is always to teach ourselves and other people just how not far removed we are from homelessness, that housing is usually one of the first things to go when it comes between housing and food, and so more we can do to make these opportunities available to the majority of folks. I mean, everybody, like you said, it's a human right. We need to do what we can. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for all you do. Thank you.
All right. Well, that's a wrap.
Love fest. Love fest.
I love it. Love fest.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Thank you.